Well, glory be and mercy me, we've done it yet again. Here we are on the graveyard walk, walking around talking about Joe Biden's State of the Union address, or as I like to call it, the psychotic war cry from the capitalist death cult. The Biden administration is using the tried and true tactic of just don't talk about our war crimes. Like, just don't talk about the fact that what is happening in Ukraine is actually America's fault. Just don't talk about the provocations. Don't talk about the Nazi funding. Don't talk about any of this. What's adorable, what has become very curious and interesting, is that the people who are actually defending Biden, right, they seem to forget who he is and what he has done. That instead of actually treating him like the man he is, we're treated to some kind of fictional version of a human being, which Biden sold his humanity out a long, long time ago. Perhaps it started when he supported and funded the Iraq War, the most illegitimate war that everyone agrees is a completely illegitimate war. Under his vice presidency, that war gets expanded from 2 nations to 7 nations. Now that he's the president, he's been bombing Iran, he's been bombing Syria, Somalia, maintaining a genocide in Palestine, maintaining a genocide in Yemen. But, he's just sweet Uncle Joe, right? He's just sweet little Uncle Joe, isn't he? Right? And completely ignores, completely sidesteps, completely pays no attention to the reality that we've been funding neo-Nazi groups in the Donbass region, the Azov Battalion, to destroy Russians there, which is what provokes this war. And pretending otherwise at this point is a form of denial and a form of lunacy, frankly. I've literally had people, I've been spreading around reporters, people like Russell Bentley, people like Scott Ritter, who have been reporting on this crisis with the full knowledge that the United States has been funding neo-Nazi groups. And I get told that these reporters are Russian propagandists, that these reporters are fake news, or that they're just crazy old men, things like that. So the cope and the delusion is high on this one. And so Joe Biden stands up to address the nation and essentially admits in front of all of us that they're just going to sacrifice Ukrainian people in order to achieve their political objectives. What are their political objectives right now? Well, obviously what this was all about at the end of the day was separating Russia from Europe, ensuring that Russia would be part of the global south and not the global north, because the goal of America ultimately is to reclaim the territory it believes is its, which is China, right? It never relinquished control of China. China just took control of its own territory, right? That Americans have been lamenting what they call the loss of China since the 60s. You know, Mao's Great Leap Forward. And since that period of time, they've been thinking and scheming, well, how do we get China back under our control? They thought they had it under Deng when Deng opened up the markets, but turns out the Chinese structure of power was stronger than the neoliberal markets, and it was able to maintain control for the benefit of the Chinese citizens. And so the goal here was always to get Russia out of the SWIFT banking system, to get Russia cut off from the American European banking system. And Russia had to have known that this was the case. This is what gives complete lie to the idea that Putin's moving in there to seize economic power. He wants the gas field, or he wants this resource over here. The resources that he gains from having invaded or having liberated, as many of the people in Donetsk are calling this, these areas, does not outweigh being removed from the SWIFT banking system, does not outweigh the economic damage, the plunging of the ruble, which is accurate. These sorts of effects have had a profound effect on how Russia's economy is going to work, and Putin was aware that these things were going to happen. He had to have been aware. Why do you think it takes 8 years for him to come to the table? Why do you think it takes him 8 years not to come to the table? Why do you think it takes him 8 years to start this conflict? And incidentally, Biden makes this absurdist claim that Putin is not engaging in diplomacy. Putin has been calling for diplomacy for 8 years. He has been at the UN calling for diplomacy. Just recently, a Russian ambassador stood to speak, and the Europeans and the American ambassadors literally stood up and walked out. Who needs to do diplomacy? Who needs to do diplomacy? The Americans aren't interested in diplomacy. Why? Because they are getting what they want. For them, this conflict was a win-win. By funding neo-Nazi groups and shelling Donbass into submission and cooing the Ukrainian government, they either got Ukraine to join NATO and then got the war front they needed in order to attack Russia, or Russia fought back, and then they were able to lower the sanction hammer and split Russia off from the rest of Europe. It's win-win for the Americans. They get to draw allies in closer, what Joe Biden calls unity, right? What Joe Biden calls unity is provoking war on the Ukrainian border so that he can chase rivals away from his property, his territory, which is Europe in his mind. And now Europe is stuck in this terrible position. Why? Because they've actually been receiving gas and resources from Russia this whole time. And all of that is going to get cut off. And who's going to suffer for it? The Europeans. As we go into a cold winter, right? These people are going to freeze. But I think that this is what the Americans are completely fine with. The oligarchs throughout America and throughout Europe, you know, the death cult, they are actually fine if the populace suffers, because they know that they can turn that suffering into soldiers who will continue to fight their Nazi-fueled war for them. They know that what they are looking for is a major conflict with Russia and China. They know this is the game that they are playing. And we are just stupidly and gullibly listening to an overt psychopathic war criminal deny his own record of vicious war and pretend as though the people he attacks are actually the people who are the criminals in the conversation. What an incredible time to be alive. And so the United States strategy at this stage in the game is to make this conflict last as long as possible, to ensure that more Ukrainians die, the most amount of suffering can be inflicted upon those people, so that they can consistently say, oh, the Russians did this terrible thing, so that they can consistently say, when in reality what is happening on the ground is that the clown ruler Zelensky is doing dumb things like saying to the populace, everybody come and get a gun. And so everybody does come and get a gun. And you know what that leads to? literal Nazi groups and gangs in open warfare with one another because they have all of these weapons and all of this ammunition that they've been given for free. I'm even hearing reports come out saying that Ukrainians are attempting to leave, but the military, i.e. the Nazis, aren't permitting them to leave. And the rationale behind this is that when the Russians finally do start shelling territory or moving into territory, they want to maximize civilian casualties, right? This is classic warfare. This is classic propaganda stuff. And it's working, clearly, because Joseph Biden can stand up in front of all of us in a State of the Union address and lie directly to our faces and say that, oh yes, this conflict has nothing to do with the neo-Nazis that I fund on the Ukrainian border. No, it's Putin who's the bad guy here. All right, guys, this is the end of this video. Like, share, subscribe, spread this stuff around, right? Leftists are getting chased off these platforms. Leftists are getting killed. Like, leftists are getting destroyed. It's the reason we're in the situation we're in, is because leftists do not get a seat at the table, right? Anytime they do a panel discussion, what do you got? You get like a Nazi, you get a neocon, and then maybe you get a liberal, and there's no socialists, there's certainly no communists at the table. It's gotten dangerous because these guys are allowed to agree amongst one another what facts should be paid attention to or not. And in this case, they've chosen to ignore the literal Nazis who have been killing Russians in Donbass for 8 years. Yeah, got some serious stuff going on here. Always remember, guys, you are a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to make sure that you just stay the good little commodity that you're supposed to be. Revolt, rebel, repent. Good luck. We're gonna need it.